artisans do I have? That's a very good question. I stopped counting a long time ago. I just have a lot. So today we're building the Zoom65V3. So they delayed the group buy just so they could get more streamer units out. The group buy will start June 18th. There's 16 colors with 5 new ones. The new colors are Aquamarine, Climb Blue, Peach Fuzz, Viva Magenta, Cafe Brown. You have 4 case versions. So you theoretically have 2 case versions. The other 2 are collabs, but you have the OG and then you have the tail light. So the tail light, it will come in 2 colors. And then for the other versions, you have a panda version and then you have a Cupid collab. It uses the ball catch for the case and then it uses the magnetic connectors. It has 7 different mountings. So you have short arm, non-load bearing, split O-ring, magnetic, levitation, silicone gel particle, which is gasket, top mount, and floating pogo pin. So 7 different mounting styles that you can do. Similar to like the Zoom75, you have different modules that you can do. So you have 6 different modules. You can do 1 key, you can do the LCD, which is default, non-magnetic badge, you have a gold light, dots badge, and then you have a telescope badge. And then for the backplate, you have 16 different options, and then they're doing a voting for the internal weight. And then the neat thing about this one also is that it will have an HE module. So that's like the cliff notes for this board so far. Okay, well anyways, that's what we're working with. I haven't opened this, so we'll see. All right, here we go. Looks like out of the 6 modules, they've sent me badge, telescope, you have the knob, you have the dots. I have all of them because the LCD screen is the default. Here's the magnets, here are the springs. So these are all the different mountings that I was just talking about. So you have the spring mount, you have the O-ring mount, here you have the magnetic levitation, this is tools. Here you have the floating pogo pin. This is extra screws, leaf spring, silicone gel. I'm guessing this is for the top mount. They have it all listed for you. So we're gonna go through all of them. What color do you think I have? So I'm guessing these are the batteries. I'm guessing these are the feet. Comes with stabilizers, standoffs. So we have strawberry milk. Cute, it's like pale pink. So this is what it looks like in bright light, and this is what it looks like in not so bright light. There's the back. So looking at the case, here you can see this is the LCD module. You do have this blocker to separate the arrows. And then right here, this key has been replaced with the module, except you have 6 different choices. You can either put a badge, you could do a knob, you could do a key, or you can do the screen right here. So I have the classic or the OG Zoom65, but if you were to get the taillight one, the taillight essentially goes from the side through the USB port and it glows. And then here's the back. Woo! This badge, you can vote for the different designs. So you have like the skull, you have the compass, another compass, this one's like a cloud, this one's a cat, you have the boba, you have a spiral with the waves, you have like the Chinese currency, a maze, limon, you got the lighthouse, you got a bomb. So a bunch of different choices. I have the telescope. And then my backplate is the one matching with the case. So you can see here, there's 6 in colors, and then the special raw version that looks like this. So mine is just the case color. Here's the USB port, and then here's the front lip. So similar to a lot of boards that we've been building recently, it uses the ball catch, so there are no screws. I will mention on the back, while you have this external weight and back plate, you have these corner feet that are right here. These are what the feet look like, and you have 2 colors that you can pick from. So ball catch, so you press it up, push it up, and then it should come off. So here you can see the module. The LCD will use the ribbon cable, but you essentially just screw it in and then you can change that out. Here's the ball catch mechanic right here, and then all these different indents and grooves are for all the different mounting. Each one of these like grooves and whatnot corresponds with whatever mounting you end up using. And then all the walls for the board on the top case. If you look at the bottom case, There's no walls here. But it's interesting because you can see that the back piece looks like a separate piece from the actual bottom case. It does use the pogo magnetic. So here you have the internal cover that's been screwed on. The batteries would go underneath. And then here, I guess you have like the standoffs. So these are actually screwed in. And then these are also more standoffs. There's a lot going on with this case. So I think this back weight is actually magnetic because it was coming off. Yeah, it is. Magnetic. So the starting price for this is going to be $169. And then PCB options, you have tri-mode flex cut, which is 1.2. You have tri-mode non-flex cut, which is going to be 1.6. And then you have single mode non-flex, so wired 1.6. Let's deconstruct this, just so I know how everything works together. Oh god. So here's where you would put the batteries. This is what I was talking about earlier, in case you guys were like, what is she talking about the back weight being like separate from the bottom case? Here you have the back piece, but as you can see, it's just a flat. It looks like it's just the bottom piece, but this is the mid piece, and then this is like the back plate. And you can change these out, and it's held onto the mid piece with the 4 screws. Okay, so looking at the badge, you have 2 screws that keep the LCD screen on it, but then you have 2 additional screws that has the actual module onto it. I have the flex cut 1.2 mm PCB. So you have flex cuts. It doesn't go all the way across, as you can see. There's flex cuts that are split. So it's not just a huge flex cut all across. This one is the biggest flex cut that I see, aside from this one. But if you look at this bottom row, you see this 1 small, 2 small, 1 tiny, even tinier, going up a size, and this is a big long one right here. This is a crazy PCB. So you can see these are for like the different mountings. You have step to regular caps lock. It looks like you can do blitz spacebar, and then here you can split the left shift if you would like. But yeah, it does have per key LEDs, RGB. Here's the back. So this is where the ribbon cable would go into. This is where the LCD screen cable will go into. There's all the foam you get. So plates, you have 6 options. You have PC, brass, palm, alu, FR4, and carbon fiber. I have the palm plate. So all the plates have flex cuts. All of them. Here you can see the standoffs. And yeah, it does have a bunch of tabs and flex cuts. These flex cuts are not as crazy as what we saw on the PCB, but there's still a good amount. So check this out. The tabs kind of alternate with the PCB. Crazy. The milk is pasteurized and prepared different in Korea versus NA. So their milk is slightly different. It tastes different. If anything, to me, it tasted like more sweet. Very strange. But it wrecked me. Their milk there hecked me up. So I think the American way of pasteurizing the milk ends up killing a lot of more of like the enzymes. Like America is one of the only countries that does it this way. But essentially, Korea's milk, like, it hecked me up. Yeah, I am lactose, but the Korean milk tasted really good, but I'll be honest with you guys, I broke out in hives. like my body did not know how to break down this milk for some reason. And I was just like, hives, right? But I still drank it because I was just like, it'll pass through my body eventually. After a certain point, my body will get used to it, right? Alright, so this is a Zoom65V3. It does use a hybrid of a magnetic ribbon mount. So it still uses the ribbon to connect to the PCB, but the actual connector and USB port itself is magnetic. So when you take it apart, you don't have to worry about this ripping off. If you get the tri-mode version, the batteries are hidden underneath here and they connect to this daughter board right here. All of the different mountings use either the plate or the PCB. So what I mean by that is if you look at the PCB, you can see how the plate has the 3 tabs and the PCB also has tabs. So in terms of what interacts with the PCB, these 2 interact with the PCB and then these 5 interact with the plate. So essentially these 3 you screw into this cubby. The leaf spring goes in the middle, the spring mount also goes in the middle, the O-ring goes on the 2 sides. But then the O-ring itself wraps around PCB tabs right here. The spring mount, while it screws in the middle right here, it will actually hit the plate and not the PCB. And then if you look at these, the ones with the open, this is for the silica gel mount. These ones with the bigger holes are for the pogos. And then these with the smaller in the middle are for the magnetic levitation, also for top mount. There's a lot going on with the board. And then one thing to note is that these cutouts on the bottom are for the pogo. These 3 screw hole cutouts are for leaf spring, O-ring, and spring mount. The silica gel mount doesn't have an anchor point. It actually just goes on the top of the case right here. I actually have a lot to say about this board. So my biggest critique right now is there's no easy way to take the case apart if you do top mount. This is why I didn't want to do top mount. How do I take this apart? There's nowhere for me to grab onto. God, I don't want to do that. Oh my god, I don't want to do that either. There's no like lip or ledge or anything to help you like pry it open. So as a disclaimer, if you decide to do top mount, in order to remove it, you might have to do the bed tuck, which is basically shake it in the middle of your bed, hoping that the ball catch comes loose. The other thing is that while I love all the different mounting things, I would say this is not a beginner board in the sense of building. It has the beginner price tag, but in terms of ease of building, with all the different mountings, it's going to lead to higher chances of builder error. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the mounting styles utilize the same screw holes, at least when it comes to leaf spring, O-ring, and spring. Leaf spring and spring both use the middle one. O-ring uses a 2. So essentially, if you want to go back and forth between the different mountings, you have to take the board apart, you have to screw off the old mounting and then screw on the new mounting. So this isn't really like that big of a deal, but if you're someone who likes to experiment, it kind of goes back to the old ways where like it will take you a long time. Whereas some of the boards we have started to see, it's like all the mountings are integrated so you can like easily change it out if you wanted to. This one, it's still pretty straightforward to change it, but it just takes a bit more time. And with all the different mountings, it'll just add up. And then some of these take a lot of, I don't want to say finesse, but it's not necessarily like as straightforward as just like sliding a gasket sock on, you know? A lot of these include like screwing it together, making sure that the small screw is like in place. And so I could see people struggling at least with the magnetic mount. There's ways that you can do it to make it a little bit more easy. And I could see people struggling with floating and then the O-ring mount. Another critique I have is that the alignment tabs are really nice, but there are some cases where it makes it a little hard to assemble certain mountings. So for example, like the O-ring, because you want the O-ring to hook onto it, but with the alignment tabs in the way, it's kind of hard to position it. So you need some kind of tool to help you hook and unhook, especially if you keep the alignment tabs on. Or to fix this, they have some kind of tool so that you don't have to use your finger matters to take it apart like this. Like if it's something that you could like screw on using a tool, I think it'd be a little easier for people. That being said, I think the alignment tabs are good to have. With all these, it can get a bit confusing. Like they're all different in some ways, so you just have to pay attention to how they are whenever you're assembling like with the different mounts. The ribbon cable for the PCB is whatever, but I actually ended up swapping to the badge because if you decide to use a module that requires you to connect it to the PCB, it's like a little hard or higher user error if you have to worry about the ribbon cable coming off on the side right here. So it doesn't have the magnetic cable, at least for the module. They have the ideas, you know, they're trying to be innovative, and I appreciate and I see that. But when it comes to how easy this is to build, I would say this is harder than what they're trying to aim for, at least for the price point, you know. And I would say if you're trying to decide between like this or the QK and which one is like easier to build, I will say right now, with the way QK has all their stuff set up, QK is more user-friendly right now than the Zoom. As an experienced builder, I would say you have a lot of choices. And if you're someone who likes to try all the choices, this is a very long project. It's not as easy as like the Neo or the QKs where you can just be like, oh, I'm gonna swap the mountings off within like a span of like 1 or 2 minutes. So if you're interested in this board, I want you to know right now that build time might be a little longer than what you might expect, especially from a board that has so many different mountings compared to the other boards on the market. But like I said, it's not bad. In terms of like typing feel, the softest I felt was these two. In terms of similarity, this is how I would categorize it. So pogo floating pin is unique, and I kind of didn't get it at first, but I'm starting to understand it. These two, floating pogo and magnetic mount, are two new ones that I haven't typed on. Everything else you see here, I've seen some kind of variations. This one is very interesting because it essentially uses two magnets of opposite so that it props up the plate, right? Because you have the two magnets like pushing against each other. And this one almost felt like typing on top mount without the feedback you would get from pressing down on the key, but it was still firm when typing on it. This one was very interesting. Floating pogo. This one apparently is supposed to be more comfortable, especially if you type for a long time, because you don't get the feedback from the bottom or the top. And the reason I was confused for this one at first is because the bottom out, I thought it hit the plate before it hit the bottom pin, so it didn't really like make a difference. And I didn't really get about the pin on the top because like when you type up, most of the feedback is from the bottom. But having the two springs on the top and bottom basically makes it so that when you're typing really fast, the board doesn't shake as much, is how they like phrased it. Shaking in the sense of like when you type down, it will bounce back up, but instead of hitting the wall on the top, it immediately will like send it back down. Imagine you just have a spring on the top and bottom. So it kind of keeps the keys in place. If you go down, you're gonna bounce back up, but as soon as you bounce up, you're gonna bounce back down. You see this motion where you're like this when you're... Okay, that's gone forever. So one thing about Mellatrix boards is that I feel like they try to do a lot in boards and try new things. I'm hoping that eventually they get to the point where they figure out something good for them and then they stick with it and refine it even more. Because right now, I guess it kind of feels like they're trying to do a lot of things rather than like finding one thing and doing it well. They have the means to experiment like that, right? Would I buy this board, or what would make me want to buy this board? So if you're comparing it to like the other competitions, right? So like QK, the first thing is having this be modular is really nice. So you can swap it out for whatever you want. So if you want a screen, or if you want a key, or if you want a badge, that's really nice. Whereas like the QK65, you can't change it. And then the badge is like down here with like an outline, which some people complained about. They didn't like the screen that had like the border. Like some people said it was like too much. So this one is a lot more cleaner in that sense, and plus you get to pick. So if you don't want the screen at all, which some people don't, you have a choice. So that's very nice. If you're someone who really likes to build and experiment and try different things, this is probably a good board for you. but you just have to realize that it's a long build, especially if you want to try everything. Another thing is that this weight magnet, so the idea is to put the connector in here, right? But I do think that the magnets are a little weak, but that's just me being nitpicky. My biggest thing is the top mount. It's just not worth it. So I actually built one that did the ball catch with the top mount that did a very good job incorporating it, and that was the Hexia V series. They actually had a good method for the ball catch and top mount. This one, a little scary. I think that's about it. That's the build. Thank you, Melatrix WS, for sending it out to me. As a disclaimer, I do have a prototype, so some things are going to be changed for the production unit. So based on feedback, some things will be a bit different. But yeah, that's the build. I am done. I'm a bit too sleepy to continue. It's time. It's time to sleepy.